Welcome to Business Formula with Bizzo. That's me. The most perpetual business show in the world. Today, my special guest is one great Australian, Angry Anderson, Order of Australia medal holder, ARIA Hall of Famer, and absolute living legend. Welcome to the show, Angry. Thanks for accepting my invitation to come and have a chat. You know,
Thank you, Bizzo. I mean, well, it's not every day that you get invited to talk to, someone as colourful as you. And most interviewers, in my experience, they're usually to do with rock and roll. Predominantly, but I've done the odd serious business interview usually. Within the format of sort of like public speaking, so as it were, but no one is as colourful as your good self.
Oh, I'll take any compliments you're prepared to give me, Angry. Now, I've got to let you know. I've got to let you know that when Dim first told me that you'd accepted my invitation to have a chat, I got a little bit excited. I did. I went.
Not sure how to take that, Bizzo.
Well,
did you look me up, so to speak?
I looked up you. Looked you up, yes. Sometimes I have trouble with syntax.
Me too, whatever they are. But
yes.
I'm sure the way we're going, we could probably take this on the road, Bizzo. But down to business first, if you'll pardon the pun. Yeah, really.
Of course.
You've got known criminals doing things like that. But anyway, having said that, I think we could possibly let's get down to business, if you'll pardon the pun, and we can talk about business, our personal business later.
Indeed. Well, look, I wanted to have a chat with you because, I am a bit of a fanboy. I think I've made that clear so far. But
Thank you.
I also wanted to talk about the things that move you, what drives you, what gets you out of bed in the morning. And based on that, how did you take it when Locomotion kept suddenly out of number one?
And I don't mean to start off our relationship by correcting you, but on this point I must. The song that kept suddenly out of number one, and it's a very interesting story, and I'll try to be as brief as I can. It was Christmas time, and I was over in London doing Top of the Pops, and suddenly was about to, it moved into the top five, and so they flew us over there for me to perform live on Top of the Pops to help promote the single, to hopefully move it into one of the top three places. So at the same time, and as would have it, I arrived, because there's endless hours of rehearsal in doing Top of the Pops. So I arrived there only to find that my next door neighbour in an adjoining dressing room was Cliff Richard. Obviously, Sir Cliff. And he'd released his something like some ridiculous number, like 150th single. And he was top five as well. And of course, I knew Cliff from appearances on Midday. And when he came out here as a fundraiser, because he was the ambassador, if you like, or the patron of several to go and attend some of these functions with him. So suffice to say, I knew him quite well. And of course, as a kid, I was a huge fan of Cliff and the Shadows. Anyway, we passed the time of day about why we were both there, and he said to me, and I'm sure he won't mind me disclosing this because it's all those years ago. He said, "Have you heard Kylie and Jason had just released a duet And he said, that's our only danger, because he said, if I can't go number one, I want Suddenly. He said, it's such a beautiful song. And I said,
It
okay,
is.
thank you very much. And he said, have you heard the Kylie and Jason duet, which went number one for about
Oh.
an hour and a half, and then Cliff out Cliff outsold it, and he went number one. They were number two. I was number three. But he said to me, "Have you heard the song?" And I said, "No." He said, "It's awful. It's just an awful." I'm sure he won't mind me saying that after all these years. Neither would Kylie and Jason, because it was a truly ordinary song, but it was Kylie, and Kylie was practically guaranteed for many years of having number ones. Anyway, that was the way it ended up. Cliff
Oh.
was number one, they were number two, and I was number three. But based on the sales figures, it's arguable, because the figures change from hour to hour at such a it's such a high density population city like London, because a lot of singles were being sold at that time leading up to Christmas, and Suddenly was a hugely successful song. So, did I mind getting pipped out of number one by Kylie and Jason? Absolutely. I have never got over it, and never will. And did I mind? Did I mind being pipped out of position number one by Cliff Richards? Not at all.
Walking, talking, living doll.
Yep, one of
Now,
my favourites.
yes, indeed. Now,
Actually,
I have had a bit. Go on.
Wired for Sound, I think, is one of my absolute favourite Cliff Richards. I think it's one of the most. Every now and again, what happens in pop music, and I'm a big fan of pop music, apart from what I do, which is not pop music, except for Suddenly, that was pure pop. Um,
Pure.
one of the great. Every now and again, you hear a single on the radio, and you say that is a perfectly written song. And Wired for Sound has those all those key elements, all those magic key elements to make a number one hit single.
Yeah. I like small speakers. I like tall speakers. With that
Oh, I
music,
love
they're
it.
wired for sound. Yeah. I know the
Unbelievable lyrics,
words.
just beautiful lyrics. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. Now, I did notice, and I have noticed over the years, that you've done a few films here and there. Bullamakanka's a classic, but you also, yeah. Oh,
That's a
you disagree.
when
You disagree with
when
my
you,
my.
no, not at all, not at all. Just that I am not surprised, because I'm learning very quickly that
Yes.
yeah. I mean, when I say intelligent, of course you are. You're anchoring a very prestigious business formula. Is a very prestigious platform show. So
Indeed.
your intelligence has never been in question, but your research and your ability for detail. Bullamakanka was one of those wonderful experiences. It was, I think, it was my first movie, or being in a movie experience, and I'm not sure what year it was. It may have been before Thunderdome, but I'm not sure. But
Oh, I think it was early '80s.
yeah, as was Thunderdome. I don't know which came first, but working on Thunderdome was amazing, because it was such an amazing, it was an enormous production, and no expense spared, and of course, so that's a level of filmmaking which is basically the area or the territory of very few, particularly people in my experience, because I mean, let's face it, people say, oh, brilliant performance in Thunderdome, you'd make a good actor, and I thought that's not acting. That's just sort of, it's like me being in Housos. It's kind of like that's it's just an extension of my true self, my persona.
Well,
Bullamakanka was
let me ask then. I was just going to say, let me ask, if you're saying it's just an extension of yourself, was there ever an idea or ever a thought to take thespianism to a career?
No, not really. After getting back to no, I'm I'm a singer. I'm not an actor, and besides, I spent a lot of time with when we did Thunderdome. I spent a lot of time with Mel, and at the time we were both living in Coogee. In fact,
Oh yeah.
he lived at one end of Coogee Beach. I lived at the other. So he was at my place a lot for barbecues and a couple of times for dinner. And
Wow.
we were doing a film together. We are doing a movie together. So there was this, like when you're doing a film, you tend to hang out with people that you're
Yep.
doing it with, and I think that's a very important thing because you establish an affinity or a relationship of some sort of kind. But he was explaining to me as we weren't, because he thought if I wanted to take it seriously, and I went to school and I honed my natural skills, or natural talents, they're not so much skills, but he explained to me in real detail how much hard work goes into improving on raw talent to become something that's very viable, and it's very sellable. In other words, a raw actor has to work on those skills that they have. Whether like if it's an appearance thing, fine, you can improve that. But your manner of speech, the timing in your speech, the way you move, etc. It's a very, very complex profession. In so much, there's so much to learn and so much to apply. And basically, I thought, no, I don't really want to be an actor, because not because of the hard work, but because those raw talents, if you like, or the raw product, that's better suited for rock and roll, and I would
Sure.
rather, and that's what I've tried to do, like any performer tries to do, is you try to hone the raw product so that it becomes just like an actor, but you're a rock singer in a band. It becomes then the same thing, a sellable. You become a sellable product, in other words. But anyway, getting back to Bullamakanka, because it was one of my favourite
Yes.
moments. It was one of my favourite, and I love the name Bullamakanka. And a great
Bullamakenga.
mate, Bullamakanka, just wanted to thank you. The theme
Yeah.
song for it was written by a great mate of mine, Tony Platts, who's a guitar
Right.
player singer from Melbourne, and I first met him playing in a band called Texas, and we've
Yep.
we've remained great mates to this day. And he's a little bloke, like myself. And these days, he used to have a wonderful head of hair. I don't know why, but he's now bald, and certainly he's not mimicking me. But I mean, I don't. It may be I've been sort of too kind to ask him whether he was balding, and that's why he may be like I was. I started to thin out at a very early age. It's a hormonal thing, apparently. But
Of
anyway, Law
course. Of
Mechanic
course.
was a fantastic movie to do because it was basically done. The people who the director and the producers were a bunch of people. I think at the end of the day just wanted to wash some money, but that's just my view. I mean,
Oh.
I'm not really a director, and they were a very young crew, and
Yep.
they were very excited about making the movie, and we were all excited about making the movie, and it was a an audacious story plot, and I played, as you know, Bizzo, um, I played the senator's bodyguard, which was hysterical because he was like well over 6 foot, and actually, an interesting story about Thunderdome is the guy who is 6'8" who played the Giant, Master
Yep.
Blaster, is now my best mate, and he's a plumber, and I do work for him. In fact, I was working earlier today for him. I do labouring for him,
Up to
and
your knees in
in whatever he takes on. Yes, but I mean, it's a great sight to see. He's 6'8". I'm five
yeah,
foot two. You know, but
yeah,
our motto for the company is no job too big or too small.
yep. 13'10".
Yeah, collectively, addition.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well,
He's a
look,
big
see,
human being.
I've always thought, yeah, well, I've always thought that I should get into acting because I believe I've got the raw talent that you talked about. What sort of refining do you reckon I'd need to do in order to, well, to play a role like Iron Bar, perhaps?
Not much to play a role like Iron Bar because again, it didn't really take an awful lot of, well, when I say acting talent, I mean, it took talent, but not acting talent. And I think the great thing about it, there's an interesting story about Iron Bar Bussy too. Um, when I first went to audition to read for the role, there
Yes,
wasn't a whole lot of dialogue anyway, but they wanted
maybe.
expressions out of it. They wanted to see really. They wanted they wanted stance. They wanted me to stand. They said, "Well, okay, you're the boss of the the royal guard, so to speak," because Tina Turner was already cast as the Queen,
Yep,
as well, the Queen figure, and so
yep.
I'm the boss of the, and everybody in. They told me this up front. Everybody in the guard is like 6 foot plus, or all the average height was about 6'4", 6'6". So I got the idea that this was a playoff of physicality of size. So I sort of adopted my best Mussolini pose, with the hands on the hips and you know chin out and got that real arrogant thing going. Anyway,
Yep.
George said to me after I'd read it for a couple of days that we just ran through scenes, and he said, "Okay, you've got the part." Now he said, "There's two names that have been suggested script-wise for your character. One's called Fister Crunchman, and the other one's Iron Bar, and the other one's Iron Bar Bassy." And I
Right.
thought, Fister Crunchman doesn't ring my bells, but Iron Bar Bassy sounds like sort of like a porn star. And
Well, I was thinking
um,
that the first one sounds a bit like a Dutch porn star.
well, that sounded a bit sort of camp for me. But anyway,
Okay.
Fister Crunchman, I don't know what that means, but
Fister.
it just sounded a bit,
Fister.
uh, you know. And so I said, so I get to choose. And he said, "Yeah, what name do you want to go by?" And I said, "I want to go by Iron Bar Bassy." Boom, there I was.
Awesome. So you chose the name of your character.
Oh, yeah,
You got the role of the boss, of the head of the guard, and you were a
yeah,
foot and a half shorter than every other member of the guard.
at
And
least.
you say you've got minimal acting talent. I would beg to
Yes.
differ.
Bless you.
Ah, I didn't sneeze. Anyway, now you do
Uh,
fantastic work. You do fantastic work in the community for the kids. You do lots of work for men's health. Back in the 90s, you started these challenges, and one of them, you built a playground in less than 48 hours. Tell me about that.
um, pardon me.
Your pardon.
It was an idea brought. I was doing midday. I did midday from 85 to 90 with Ray as a compare, and then he took over the chair for from 90 onwards. Well, from 91 onwards, took over the chair for the next 4, 5, 6 years of current affair. And they were trying to expand a current affair and build it back to its glory days, I suppose. And so they convinced Ray who is a very, very serious and a very, very accomplished um, a journalist in his own right. And I don't think, I'm not suggesting for a second that he was wasted in Midday, because um, Ray, under his navigating skills, so to speak, he took Midday to other levels from where the lovely Mike had left it. And because Mike Walsh had built Midday over a series of years, many years, into one of the most watched. I mean, who watched television in the middle of the day? But it was almost like a huge slice of Australia would stop and watch Mike Walsh's Midday show. When Ray took over, of course, Ray was already established as a favourite on television, and who doesn't like Ray Martin? And so but we, under his guidance and the belief of the producer Paul Melville, they took the raw sort of talent, or whatever you like to call it, and molded it and helped shape it and helped sort of. They didn't rub all the rough edges off, because I kind of think that that's what they wanted from me, but they just wanted me to be a little bit more professional than those very, very early moments. And anyway, so when Ray left and took over Current Affair, he said to me, he said, look, would you like to come and continue? Because I'm not too sure who came after Ray, but it was eventually ended up in the hands of Kerry Ann Kennelly, and it became a different show again. So it was always growing and evolving and being different. It didn't stay stale. And so I said to Ray, I said, I like what we've done during the Midday days. And he said, well, we'll just extend it. We'll broaden it when we go to a Current Affair. Now, as would have it, what happened was a couple of Australian young, really, really talented and very hungry young producers came back from several years in London, and they brought back an idea that they'd seen on London television, out of London, and they wanted to replicate but they wanted to expand on the original idea, and they wanted someone as quirky, because in London, or the original show, that the challenge, the show I did, is based on, had a female, very quirky female anchor piece, like the role I played. And and they wanted to call it Challenge, and I won't name them, but quite a few, at least 2 or 3 that I know, quite very, very high profile people auditioned for the role because it was such a terrific idea. Anyway, Ray, to God bless his socks and to his credit, and I'll be eternally grateful, not only gave me my start in television with those first years with Midday, but he suggested me, he said, look, I don't know why, supposedly the story goes, he said, I don't know why you're looking anywhere but right here at home, like right in our own backyard. We've got Angry Anderson, who's just perfect for the role. And so I took on Challenge, and the first challenge we did, it actually was built over, in real terms, it was built over a week, but we condensed it to a weekend, which was 48 hours, and we built. It was the facility for the blind, and not the rocks at the harbour, the suburb rock. Anyway, they were going. No, I don't think it was wrong. I should be able to remember these things, but anyway,
I understand aging, even though I don't do it.
Yes, the luxury of being a puppet. But anyway, having said that,
Indeed. Yes.
um, they came to us. They said, "Look, we need to pay the rent." So we did a fundraiser based around the fundraiser was generated, or the building of the, and they wanted a sensory playground. So we built on the existing ground. We upgraded their buildings, but in this big area that they had, these brilliant people came in and designed. They're brilliant architects. They designed a sensory garden, and it was a myriad of paths, and it had water sounds. It had wind chimes everywhere in the trees. It was like a mini botanical garden, because it had like a dozen different trees planted, so that the sight impaired could go and touch these trees and feel different textures. So, and that's why they said it was a sensory. It had to appeal to the senses. So for the deaf people who could see it, they could, they could actually experience things like they put their hands on a metal or a wood thing, and then someone would hit it, and there would be a vibration go through it. It's that kind of thing. Yeah, awesome. And for the blind people, of course, it was an amazing experience, because they had smells, they had touch, they also had all these sounds, etc. So yeah, it was an extraordinary thing to do as our first project, because it was the first of its kind in Australia.
It sounds brilliant. And see, it just demonstrates again to me your love of community, your love of people, and your love of helping.
Well, I was brought up by a Roman Catholic woman, so I had the love of humanity beaten into me as a child.
Yeah, I know someone who had a similar sort of experience.
Yeah. Wouldn't be you, would it?
Me? No, I'm just a puppet.
Yeah. Hey.
Now tell me,
not so much of this, not so much of this just business.
Oh, well, you started it with your self-deprecation about not being an actor and whatnot. You started it.
Yeah, but I'm allowed to.
It. Oh, so I'm not. You are, but I'm not. So two different sets of rules.
You're the anchor. You're the star of the show.
Absolutely, I am. But I still need to self-deprecate every now and then, so I can fish for compliments.
All right. I'll allow you that. I'll allow you that.
Now, on the idea of you helping people, I heard about a magazine that started called T Next, and you were the ambassador for that. Can you tell me whether that's going to go ahead, or you want to take that further, or what do you think might happen with T Next, or is it just dead in the water?
Who knows what the future holds for us? I think, particularly today, more than ever, and I don't want to get bogged down in this, because like most Australians, I am just saturated with, the present situation with the plague and all the political manipulations. I was going to say machinations, but the real word is manipulations.
I couldn't agree more.
The way that our government, federally, and our state governments have acted towards the public, supposedly on our behalf, is just nothing short of absolutely ridiculous. They've been contradictory. They've been inconsistent. They've instilled fear. They've instilled uncertainty. They've turned people against one another. That's when I had a joust, or when I laughingly had a run for government, I was still idealist, even though I knew a lot about government, or I thought I did. Yes. I was still idealistic. I still, the incurable romantic. I still believed that I could, had I won, a term, even if it was just a term, that I could right some wrongs, and I could stir the pot, and I could agitate, and I could get, because I thought, well, I'm not getting into politics for a career. I mean, I didn't have enough time. And again, I probably only had one or two terms, and by that time I would have been able to take the raw product and possibly polish it up a bit so that I was a part-way successful and therefore effective politician. But it didn't take me long to realise, to learn, to become aware of that wasn't going to happen. But what I did, one of the sad things that I saw up close, because when you have a persona like mine, when you're Angry Anderson, bullfed yobbo rock singer, reformed alcoholic, drug addict, misbehaving, dysfunctional person. And I learned from a very, very early age from that wonderful Roman Catholic mother of mine, is that you never judge people by their colour. I was going to say colour because Mum's Mauritian, and so she's quite dark in appearance, but you certainly don't judge people by their colour. Very, very exotic. She's a beautiful woman. When she was she's still a beautiful woman now, but I mean, that youthful beauty. But she taught me at a very, very early age that you don't. But I get judged by, not just by my appearance, still to this day, but by the perception. I call it the one goat syndrome. But like 40 years ago, I was, the bad boy for love. I was the singer in Rose Tattoo, the baddest band in the world. And, so that's stuck all this time. So when I was, manoeuvring to try and win a place in government, with all the right intentions in my heart, I knew that I was being dismissed as less than a moron by my colleagues, so to speak, or my fellow
parliamentarians.
The people that I came in contact with. Apart from the few beautiful, gifted people that I worked with on the campaigns, they believed in me. They saw something more than what I'm describing. Other people, the already elected politicians. And what I realised, and this is one of the great sadnesses, is that's the way they look at people. Is that they're in such an exclusive position, and they're excluded. And it's very cliche, but it's become very cliche in recent days. But it's very true. Most of them have never, walked in, like the people that they're supposed to represent. They've never walked in their shoes. They've come out of uni, most of them, and the others that haven't come from sort of like
law.
A lot of politicians. Yeah, law, exactly. And they come straight out of. They get their law degree. And they go straight into Parliament, or they get elected because, and there's this insidious dynamic within each party and all parties, the major parties, the four of them, where there's a huge amount of politics goes on in the background that we don't get privy to, that gets people put up for nomination to be elected, and they might necessarily be the right people for the job, but they've kissed enough ass. They've kissed enough ass, and they're owed a few favours, or they know something about somebody that somebody doesn't want anyone else to know. There's a lot of secrets kept within the political arena, and I mean, this whole quota thing, which has come about it's not just male and female anymore. Of course, there's a quota of people that don't identify as gender, or whatever. But there's quotas now, which means we're going to end up with a lot of people who don't deserve to be there, but they'll be there because they tick the boxes, and that's a really sad. Yeah, I know it sounds absolutely ridiculous even as I'm saying it, but it actually is happening. And what I mean was that I found out it had already happened, male female, but it had already happened male or female, because people that didn't deserve to be there were that faction, like the left of the Liberal Party, or the left of the Labor Party, or the middle right, or the middle people, or the right, whatever. And they all put up their person and go, well, you've got to elect this person. This is our nomination, right? And I remember sitting there, and this is me judging books by cover. Well, not so much, but I've got a fairly keen ability. It's a street thing, right? I can read people, like people with a fair bit of life experience can, if they've been taking notice along the way. And I'm sitting there just thinking to myself, I'm looking at this person who's already been elected, so is in the Senate, is a parliamentarian, whether it's state or federal, and I'm just thinking, like, fuck. Oh, sorry.
That's all right. My ears.
I'm just thinking to myself, like, Jesus, like, you're in Parliament, you get to vote. I mean, really? And I just thought, well, one of the things that I learned very quickly was that I didn't belong there.
Fair enough. Have you heard the story of the post turtle?
The story of
the post turtle. Well, the post turtle, there was a turtle just sitting on the top of a post one day. And this farmer walked up and wondered what was going on. And the turtle said that he wanted to be a politician. And the farmer asked him how he got there. And the turtle said, I don't know. And that's how he became a politician. somewhere he oughtn't to be. Oh, I didn't deliver it very well. I heard it off another person.
No. I got what you were trying to get at.
You got what I was saying. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that was the eye opener, Bizzo. I sat there on so many occasions and thought, like, you can remember figures. See, okay, now there's the thing about campaigning. One of the things, and I remember talking about some things like teenage depression, suicide, self-harming, things about kids, right? So in the areas that I ran, they were very strongly held by Labor, and there was very little, if any, facilities for kids in school that suffered bullying or had dysfunctional home life, or one of their parents or two of their parents were drug addicts, or whatever it may have been.
Yep.
I remember when I ran for a state seat, I ran in an area that had a huge unemployment problem, and of course that really affected the young people. And there was a huge ice problem in this, and there was the police were telling me, in the pub when we were having a beer, off duty, off the record, that there was a huge domestic violence. So I went back to the people in the party and I said, well, these are the issues I want to address. And I went, no. You talk about jobs, you talk about roads, you talk about the schools and the hospitals.
Toe the line.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. And I just thought, you know what, all the years that I've been watching politics and learning from a lay person's point of view, that's all they do. They talk, when it comes to election time, it's jobs. Okay, that's important. We all get that. But the rest of the world goes unnoticed as far as because it's just campaign. hip pocket, hip pocket, hip pocket, frighten them out, frighten the hell out of them, that if this party, the other party gets in, they're going to be worse off in the hip pocket. And you
Yep.
talk about schools, because every parent wants a decent school system. I mean, right now, we've got a school system right throughout the country, whether it's and now it goes all the way down to primary, but certainly in primary school, but I mean even in infant schools, childcare, etc. But it goes all the way up to uni. I mean, our education system is just rotten to the core. I mean, and it's producing a lot of people who are not well equipped for real life, and it leads them to believe, for one reason or another. Anyway, I don't want to get bogged down in that, but that was my motivation.
Yeah, well, I can see it's something you're passionate about, and I can see that the fact that, well, as you say, the school system's rotten, and parenting these days is all about protecting kids from, well, any sort of harm or disappointment, and so they come out into the real world and they're not ready for disappointment. They're not ready for some ugly mongrel who's going to say, no, that's not how it works, mate.
Yeah, well, even an ugly mongrel might be a well-meaning boss
Indeed.
who sitting in front of them, or that they've hired or apprenticed, is this young person who thinks that the world owes them a living, and that they are what is now being referred to, if you're to believe social media, let alone mainstream media, which is the greatest oxymoron, apart from your good self.
I'm not mainstream yet.
I think exactly. Well, we're going to work on that.
I need to get sponsorship from a pharma company.
Ouch! Careful. Let's go there.
Sorry.
But
what did I say? What did I say?
Yeah, I really do believe that that there's a lot of people that are being led up the path and distracted from, just as before when we're talking about politicians who have never really, had a real, never really lived anything but school, and they're members of the younger members of the Labor Party, or young Liberals or whatever. And I might say at this moment, I don't think something truly I believe, and I am a lapsed Labor. I grew up in an extremely one-eyed, narrow-minded Labor family. That was very, very certain members of the family were very heavily unionised or belonged to unions, etc. My younger brother, who's God rest his soul, was the last of the Andersons to benefit from that, from the association with unionism. He was a auto elect on the wharves in Melbourne, and so I come from a very, very Labor background, but it was during the 70s, and then that sort of started to melt away from me, because I started to read more and see more and hear more, and so for quite a while there, I suppose I was rudderless, if you and I was more interested in other things. Psychedelics and music and stuff, and and just hanging out and being a hedonist, just being lots of party, blah blah. That's what you do when you start out in rock and roll, and I found myself drifting more and more away from Labor and or that kind of background, because by not being blinkered, by not being narrow-minded, I started to look at from world politics, I started to look at local politics, and I realised at a very, very, very early age, or very age, when I say not my age as in years, but during that late 70s, particularly late 70s,
Yep.
mid to late 70s, that neither party were serving the population.
Sure.
Paying lip service to that. They said, "Oh, but we're for the people." Well, yeah, of course you say that if you're a politician, and I do believe that some of them actually do believe it even today. But anyway, getting back to the point I was about to make, I cannot and will not and have not voted for either of them. I haven't voted Labor since Bob Hawke, but who was one of our great prime ministers, and I'm glad that I'm able to say that I had a part in that, because every vote counts. Well, that's what we're led to believe, and that's I held on to that. I still hold on to that belief. I told you I was naive and an incurable romantic, but
but you also said you read. That's dangerous.
well, there's that too, and I listen, and I watch, and I listen, and I learn. One of the things that, and I might say this anyway, just to make my point, I would neither have I voted for either of the major parties for many, many elections. I always direct my I always direct my votes somewhere where I know if it's going to be like the preferential thing. If it's going to go one way or the other, okay, I know that's where it's going to end up. I think one of the best moments that we ever had, and I think it was a moment not appreciated, and I don't know enough about the history, but I think Don Chip was started
Democrats.
The Democrats, yes, and I think I voted that way for quite a few years, and I think that's what Australia needs. I think the world needs that, but I think definitely Australia, because being Australian, it's my main focus and my favouritism, my bias, of course, is for the country I love the most, which is Australia. And I think we need to. I think we need to go through a growing pain, so to speak, of pushing our votes towards independence, with an eye on where they're going to end up as preferences. To basically, we're never going to completely reform, but we can scare the hell out of them by not giving them the kind of power where they can just ride roughshod over us.
Well, tell me then, do you think the Australian public in general actually thinks enough to do that?
No, sadly, no.
Which is the rub.
Which is the rub. Absolutely. Couldn't have put it more eloquently myself.
Well, thank you very much.
I think if anything, okay, I'm a great philosopher. I'm not a great philosopher, but philosophically I believe, and I'm a great believer in the philosophy that no matter how dark something is, something good will grow from it, or can come from it, even if
eternally hopeful.
Absolutely. So even if you suffer great loss or some great tragedy, which loss is a great tragedy, sooner or later, even if it just makes you more resilient and stronger, then you can say, well, there's a lot to be had out of that. But if you can survive that, then you found something within yourself that you didn't know before. So that's why philosophically they say a positive comes out of even the worst tragedy. And I learnt that very, very pointedly the first time that I walked across Kokoda, that
Yeah.
No matter how much pain you endure, something can come out. It's like the phoenix, which is, my back job is a phoenix, because life rises out of the ashes of death.
Yep.
So one thing finishes so another thing can begin. And
Indeed.
that's a beautiful way of looking at life, as long as you keep the faith, as long as you hang on to that and believe it fervently. It will manifest itself in your life as truth. So regardless of how bad, so getting back to today with the plague and all that and the absurdity, I mean, yeah, okay, we know that there is a virus. Well, I have watched a couple of alternative views of it. One of the most
Not
interesting.
the YouTube.
No, the Google Tube, not just the Google Tube or the face fasts,
Yes.
but there are some there are moments that are worth having, both from face fasts and Google Tube,
Sure.
because they give the other side of the picture.
Yes.
And one of the most interesting I saw was a leading virologist, immunologist, a woman, American woman, and I only watched this a couple of weeks ago, and she did an interview, and she's
I
worked.
lost you there for a sec, Angry.
Oh, where did I drop
Leading
out?
virologist.
Yeah, so there was this interview on Google Tube,
Yep.
with this immunologist, virologist, and that was her whole. She's up until she was sort of. They've tried to discredit her because she doesn't toe the party line.
Yep.
And she was giving this interview, and she said, strictly speaking, the COVID isn't a virus; it's a disease. And I thought, because there is a great distinction. It's kind of like the distinctions between like anxiety and depression. One of the great misconceptions is that if you're anxious or you suffer anxiety, you're depressed. Well, you're not.
No,
And you can be depressed without suffering anxiety. But
absolutely.
the two are so bandied around together these days that young
Buzzwords.
people, buzzwords. You're a sharp operator, you are.
As attack.
See, behind that pink hair.
Oh yeah.
But they're the brain. And buzzwords. And they work so well, buzzwords, as you know.
Indeed.
But there's a reason that they bandy around depression, anxiety, depression together in the same sentence. And it's because they want to give people the idea that if they do suffer anxiety, they are depressed, or if they are depressed, they're suffering anxiety, which is, it's kind of like when I went into therapy to deal with grief. And I went into therapy to get grief counselling. And I remember I was, half a dozen sessions in, and I arrived at the session, and I said, I've had this feeling and had that feeling, and blah blah blah, and the therapist, who I'd known for many years, went to see him for marriage counselling before my marriage broke up, and he said, "What are you describing?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, tell me what you're describing." I said, "Well, I'm describing grief. I've suffered loss. I'm grieving." And he said,
Yep.
"No, you're not. What you're describing is depression." And he said, "You've been down this path before. In other words, I should have recognised the signs." And I said, "Well, I'm suffering grief. Of course I'm depressed." And he said, "What makes you think because you're suffering grief, you need to be depressed?" He said, "Grief is one emotion. Depression is a mental condition." And it's the same about anxiety and depression. Because, therapists don't use buzzwords. The press, who want to fox us or who want to deceive us, they use buzzwords in an effort to confuse us and or through propaganda, educate us, re-educate us, or
re-educate. Yes,
I think there's a wonderful moment on Face Fast where Denzel, what a man!
Yes.
Yeah, big, lots of man love here for Denzel.
Yeah, sure.
And he says he's facing the camera. It's a very famous thing on Face Fast, and he says, if you watch the news, you're misinformed. And if you don't watch the news, you're ill-informed.
Yes.
And or words to that effect. But what he meant was, you're damned if you do it, damned. Uninformed.
That's
he
right.
said,
yes.
yeah, you're damned if you do it. I mean, I haven't watched television for, I won't have 12, 15 years ago, when the kids were young. I mean, my youngest my youngest who's living with me now is 30. So it was at least 15 years ago.
Yep.
And I realised that television was degenerating into what it is today, which is just like, it's just rubbish.
Well, that's where I'm fortunate that I live inside a bag most of the time, so I don't even get to watch television when it's on. It's fantastic.
You don't know how lucky you are.
It's all about perspective, my friend.
It is indeed. Yes, indeed.
Now, look. Let's talk about something a bit light for a sec.
Let's lighten it up. Yep.
Way back in 1981, you went to the Reading Music Festival. Do you remember any of that?
No.
But
I've seen.
I can tell you a bit about it.
I've seen the photos. I know I was there. Yeah. You know what?
Lots of blood and a speaker.
So many people. Well, there was a speaker. There was 2 guitars, the microphone. It was nutso.
And the amp stack.
But the thing about it is some of those iconic photos, and I don't think I think I can safely say I don't think there's ever been any more grotesque photos ever taken of anyone in rock and roll. I can't remember seeing, and I am often, particularly when we used to have a shirt out, the band had a shirt with that on, and it just said, "Not just a pretty face," and people used to say, like, that's just, like that photo says it all. And I said, yeah, it's my mum's favourite photo. Of course, I remember when Mum saw it, and in a magazine, and she said, that person really looks like you. And I said, yeah, really? And I said, that's because it is me, Mum. She said, don't be ridiculous. You wouldn't do something like that. So that was the Reading was our baptism as far as the world stage went. I mean, we went to England. We lived there for, I think, 10 or 11 months in a year, 10 months.
Yeah, okay.
And to establish ourselves in Britain stroke Europe, where our biggest audience still exists to this day, which is why we go back every year to play. It's funny, because the band never got in Australia anywhere near how big or how popular or our whatever. Yeah, so we got this chance to play Reading, which of course is legendary, and I think on the same day, it was an amazing festival over 3 days. And we went on about like lunchtime, so we were early in the piece.
Yep.
And if memory serves me right or correctly, there was a band on before us called Samson, and Bruce Dickens, who now
Yeah.
is the singer and has been the singer in Iron Maiden forever. He was the
Yeah.
singer in that band, and
There you go.
yeah, so we went out there and expecting to be playing to like maybe 1,000 people that wanted to be down the front, because I think later on that day there was a couple of really big bands, and I think Gillan was on the top of the bill. If there was a couple of bands, I think the band I stayed to see was it wasn't Mott the Hoople, but it was the guitar player singer from Mott the Hunter, Ian
Okay.
Hunter. And anyway, long story short, yeah, we went on and we came out on the stage, and the crowd was just enormous, and it went on forever. And as soon as we walked out, the crowd just, wow, there was this roar came off the crowd. And we didn't realise until that moment that we were so well known. And I mean, there was a lot of Australians down the front, I've got to tell you, about 4 or 5
From
deep,
Earl's Court.
right across the stage. There was just this massive Australian flags, Eureka Stockade flag, the Southern
Yep.
Cross, and there was banners up, Aussie, 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 and all this kind of stuff. A lot of Australians down the front, but at the back and around the sides were all these English people that just had been waiting to see the band. And we were just shocked. So we just went full on into it, and we gave it, which every band should do every time it walks on stage.
Yep.
But we were energized by this this energy coming out of the audience, and we just went.
Must have felt like a
And
wave.
it's an experience which only people in bands can know what I'm talking about. And it's kind of, and it was when I look back at those pictures now, and people, I still run into people that were there, and because they're my age now, and they go, we couldn't believe what we were seeing, couldn't believe what we were hearing, but like you just went off, and I did, and I think when I've been asked to try and explain it, I say, well, sometimes the combination between the energy the audience gives you, and then you give it back through the music, they give it back through the response, you give it back through the music, and it's like nuclear fission. And that's the only way I could explain what happened, was that it became larger than life, and it called for some sort of response. And that's what happened to me, on that day.
I can only imagine what it felt like, but it sounds like a physical force.
It's a complete sensory overload. There's the physicality of it. You don't intellectualize the process, but there is a part of an intellectual process going on, because there's no doubt that because that's when you're performing, you try to not just relate to the audience, but read them, so to speak. Like, are they ready for this? Are they ready for that? Do we need 2 more songs to get them to the point where you can stop the band and start clapping your hands and go, whoa, 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 and they follow you. So that's showbiz. But there's an experience to have, and bands have it, often, which is great, where the magic happens, where it's not quite earthly real. I mean, of course it's earthly because you're there physically. The intellectual process is just of no use whatsoever. So it's pure raw emotion. And what happens is it's magic. It's the only word that I can use to describe it. And something just happens, and you look back on it, you see the photos, you meet people and say, like, I was there, and you go like, oh, so was I. I've seen the photos, I've seen the footage, but
Yeah.
it's like a real experience. You have it, and it belongs to that moment.
Yeah, sure. I think I understand what you're saying there. You can try and describe it all you want, you can try and relive it all you want, but it will never come back like that again.
No, no, no. And I mean, unless, and this is why I said, this is why it's so important that I've run into people since then that were actually there at Reading,
Yeah.
and any of these other performances that I'm thinking of, like,
Yeah.
like we walk out on the stage. There's a huge festival in Germany called Wacken, and
Yeah.
there's my youngest now. The
Not bad.
Hi, darling. Um,
G'day, young
yeah,
fella.
Bizzo says hello.
Hello.
Yeah. So
Hey,
anyway,
well,
well, no, he's great. He's great. I'd be lost without him. But yeah, it's just one of those things where you just think to yourself, like, I'm just so fortunate that I was part of that. But what makes it,
yeah,
because you can look at the photos, you look at the footage, you hear how the band was just on fire, so you can understand why. Like when I listen back to some of our live tapes,
yep,
I just swell up because the band are just, fuck me. I mean, what a band! What a they
yeah,
just they're insane. It's easy to do what I do in front of them because they make it so easy. But getting back to the people that were there, they can give you a glimpse through their own experience of what they experienced, and that's
yeah,
I've had people. I don't mean to be bombastic or arrogant, but um, I've had people come to because it's not about me, it's about the band, and they've
yep,
come to me and they've said, blah blah, this night, or Reading, or this night, or that night, or this one, and they
yeah,
go like,
yeah,
a life changing experience,
yeah,
and that's when you realise it was for me too. It was
yeah,
a
for
life
sure.
changing experience. Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah,
I'll get
when you've got
misty
a
in a
good
minute.
rocking band, oh look, I'm trying to do that to you. Now, tell me what look. I'm getting an idea that we're running over time here somehow.
Oh, really?
Doug, not that it bothers me, and it doesn't seem to bother
Me,
you.
me
So
either. Well, we'll do part two,
good.
Bizzo.
Well, here's what I
We'll
was
do
going to
part
suggest.
two.
What I was going to suggest to you, Angry, is that we meet up on a regular basis and have a good old chin wag for the punters out there. Talk about your work in the community. Talk about Tats. I mean, you got them back together 3 years ago. What's happening there? We've got to talk about loads and loads of stuff. But I think Dimitri's got, well, he runs by a clock.
He's probably there pulling his hair out.
Ah! now, Angry,
I had
just
to
on
do
that
that.
note, I know you did, and I have to do this. This is the last section, the last question of this interview. It's called Guess What with Bizzo, and it's my funny question time. Now,
Okay.
I heard a story. I heard a story off a fella just the other day about ancient
Oh,
emu hunters. Yeah, I heard about ancient emu hunters, how they bury themselves in the dirt where the emus lay their eggs, and the emu would come along, and after a time would see the shiny bald head there buried in the ground or on the top of the ground, and would sit on it. And then, when the moment was just right, the emu hunter would jump up and grab the emu. I got to know, are you a professional emu hunter?
no, but it's given me a hell of a good idea.
Oh, good. Well, because my hair
Yeah,
peels off. My hair peels off, so we could go emu hunting together.
absolutely. Or we could appear
Indeed.
as, yeah. There's
Angry
places
Bizzo.
we can take this places, Bizzo.
Oh, yes, indeed. Oh,
Anyway,
you not think
I think as long as the boss man who pays the bills,
Yep.
as long as he gives it the okay, yeah, I think we should bit further down the track. I think we should do a catch up, and because there's, I mean, let's face it, there's a lot of stuff to talk about. I mean, I've got some, I mean, the tat thing. We'll leave it with this. The tat thing
Yep.
is a huge part of my life and always has been. But
Yep.
in recent times, I've formed another. Well, I've employed another band to be
Yep.
my band, the AA band, and to do a different kind of music because, at my age, I realised that life is finite, and before it gets too much, till it slips away from me completely. So there's a new band and a new style, a different style of music to talk about. There's Rose Tattoo because the Rosie Tarts aren't finished yet.
Oh, good. That's awesome to know. Now, so that means we need to line up a time sometime soon, but we won't do it now because
No,
we'll have to get. I'll get my people in touch with your people as it goes.
that's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
I think that my people is actually listening in right now.
Hopefully.
Oh yeah, sure it is. Unless he
Well,
got
I mean,
bored
just
with our chat and disappeared.
well, I mean, with two loose cannons like we are,
It seems
you'd
the
want to
so.
think, you'd kind of hope that someone's watching, sort of just says, okay, when they push that button, when one of us goes too far.
Go on.
Well, thank you very much, Angry Anderson, for coming and spending time with me on Business Formula with Bizzo. That's me, the most puppetastic and puppet show in the
Puppetastic.
world. Puppetastic, puppet trick, puppet trick. Yeah, it's a hard thing to say when you're a puppet. It's been brilliant having you on the show, Angry Anderson. Tune in next
Thank you.
time to Business Formula with Bizzo. That's me. Thank you.